Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City Council virtual meeting for September the 1st, 2020. At this time, I am calling the meeting to order. We are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And how about Mrs. Colleen Stanley lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And from there, we'll go to the prayer. So, Colleen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Councilman Palma, please lead us in prayer.
Sure. Let's all pray together. Let's pray. Almighty God in heaven, we thank you for every moment of our lives. Father, you have seen all the tough times around the world, and we have seen people suffering and going through so many negative things. And today, we beg you, God, we humble ourselves before you to ask you, please help us for all these things to come to pass, and help us to have a heart to glorify your name and give the strength to all of the families that they have lost a loved one. Father, we pray for all the students and teachers, police, doctors, and all of those on the front line, all the schools that are soon to be open. Please keep them safe, healthy, and well. Father, we pray for this coming election that soon to be. Please let it be your will and not ours. And let us to glorify your name in every single way. And let it be your word. Father, bless everyone here today, their families, provide everything that they need. And thank you once again for the life that you provide to us. Father, we believe that all things are possible in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you all.
Thank you, Councilman. We appreciate your leading us in prayer. We're going to give Ms. Natalie a shot at calling the roll. So go ahead, Gene.
Elves,
Present.
Bob Buzaid,
Present.
Mike Esposito, Warren Levy,
Present.
Salvatore,
Present.
Stanley,
Here.
Tabersack,
He's on.
yeah, he's there. Fox,
Present.
Priola,
Here.
DiGiulio,
Here.
Cabo,
Present.
Rotello,
Here.
Visconti,
Here.
Palma,
Present.
Knapp,
Here.
John Esposito,
Here.
Santos,
Present.
Perkins,
Present.
Trinazy,
He's there.
Trinazy,
He's here.
okay. Kamiza,
Here.
Molinaro,
Richie will not be with us tonight, Gene.
okay, so that's 2,
Yes.
3, no, Tabersack is there. 2, Mike Esposito and Molinaro.
Pause 1 minute while we just make sure nobody's trying to get in. So give us 1 second.
So I am, yeah.
Mayor Boughton?
Yes, sir.
Could you just give me a minute? Mr. Esposito is having a hard time logging on, and I'm just trying to get him logged on.
No problem.
I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
That's okay. Well, if he gets on.
Folks, make sure you mute your computers, please, because we can hear just about everything going on at your house. Mr. Cabo, we're going to send the link to Mr. Esposito again.
Yeah,
And
I just did that, Your Honor, and we're just waiting for the email to hit, and hopefully he'll be able to click right on the link and get on.
okay, if that doesn't work, he can dial in and we'll give him a dial-in number.
Okay, Your Honor, I think he might be in.
Yes, it looks like he's on. So there being 20 present, 1 absent, Mr. Molinaro being not with us this evening. I have 2 pieces of correspondence I'd like to read into the record, and I will do so slowly so that all of us can hear effectively exactly what is being said. Okay, first one is from Peter Green. Peter lives at 51 Main Street, Danbury, Connecticut, 06810. He does say mask up, better safe than sorry, so it's good advice. So Peter has a comment on item 6, which is the sewer and water extension. He says, if we add residents to our city water system drawing from, say, the main reservoir and the drought continues, inversions 1, is this good? Okay, inversions. 1, these are his questions. 1, is this good? 2, in my opinion, if the city goes to remove people from the system, this cannot be done legally, at least without a court fight. Sincerely, Peter Green. Thank you, Peter, and I'm sure we can get some answers for you. The second one is from Tom Brown. Tom lives on 10 Valerie Lane, Danbury, Connecticut, 06810. I'm sorry, he's 11-4961. And he has 2 comments. One has to do with the department reports. Town clerk is missing. The town clerk does not do a department report, as you know, so he certainly can call Jan and she'll give him whatever answers he wants. The other comment, though, has to do with 10 department reports, health and police department. Tom says the following: the recent spike in Danbury COVID-19 cases suggests that efforts to enforce Connecticut executive orders need to be stepped up. The efforts to educate and persuade people to respect the rules on mask distancing deserve to be reinforced by enforcement. What are our options on COVID-19 rules enforcement? New York State has revoked the liquor licenses of bars that have violated New York COVID-19 rules for bars. Danbury bar owners have been arrested, but was the Connecticut Liquor Control Commission alerted? Can our health department revoke the business operating permit of any Danbury establishment that fails to enforce social distancing and mask requirements? I think we need to move beyond issuing warnings. This is not like addressing people not wearing seatbelts. When their seatbelt is needed to save them and it is not worn, it is only they who die. Citizens who fail to respect the dangers of COVID-19 and choose to not follow the law, whether out of ignorance or arrogance, or by stupidly following the example of ignorant and arrogant political leaders, they are endangering the rest of us. It is government's responsibility to protect us from their behavior. Okay, and those are the only two comments that I have for tonight under the public speaking portion. These will be on file and be saved. With that, Mr. President, can we have the minutes, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I move that we waive the reading of the minutes as all members have copies. And copies are available for review in the Legislative Assistant's office and online as well.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded by Mr. Perkins. Any corrections, changes, or deletions to the minutes as presented? Seeing none, then I will try your minds in acceptance of the minutes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Give me a thumbs down. Okay, I do love that thumb thing. Okay, minutes pass unanimously. Mr. Majority Leader, can we have the consent calendar, please?
Yes, Your Honor, is the consent calendar for September 1st, 2020. Item 4, receive the communication and approve the residential license for the Chow House at Farrington Park as presented. Item 7, receive the communication and adopt the resolution authorizing Mayor Mark D. Boughton or Cara Marie Prunty, Acting Director of Health as his designee, to apply for and accept funding from the Connecticut Health Foundation through its Utilizing Community Health Workers in COVID-19 Response Grant Program in an amount not to exceed $59,000, with funds to be used by the City of Danbury Health and Human Services Department to assist in mass immunization, contact tracing, and prevention and control activities from September 1st, 2020 to January 31st, 2021, with no local match being required. And lastly, item 8, receive the communication and adopt the resolution authorizing Mayor Mark D. Boughton or Katie Pearson, Library Director as his designee, to apply for and accept funding from the American Library Association through its Resilient Communities Libraries Respond to Climate Change Grant Program in an amount not to exceed $1,000 with no local match being required. That's it.
He's not. Maybe he's muted.
Muted, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Fox. Any corrections or changes to the consent calendar as presented? Seeing none, then I will try your minds in acceptance. Mr. Cabo,
He's muted.
you're muted. Mr. Cabo, you're muted.
Nothing.
Sorry about that. Due to a conflict on item number 7, I'm going to have to abstain from voting on that, but I will vote in the affirmative on the other 2 items. I just need the record to reflect that I cannot vote on item number 7. I'll be abstaining on that number.
Okay, the record shall reflect that Mr. Cabo will not be voting on item 7 and his vote will be recorded as an abstention for item 7 only. Okay, any other changes or correct?
Went back to this.
Okay, seeing none, then I will try your minds on acceptance of the consent calendar. All in favor, please signify by saying aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, let's try number 1, see how good your connection is tonight.
Communication, appointment for superintendent of apparatus. Dear council members, I hereby submit for your confirmation the appointment and promotion of Lieutenant David Kirkwood to the position of superintendent of apparatus. Lieutenant Kirkwood began his career with the city of Danbury as a firefighter on July 10, 1987, and was promoted to lieutenant in September 2004. He holds a bachelor's degree from the State University of New York, which is SUNY, at Oswego, and has earned a multitude of certifications, including but not limited to firefighter 1, 2, and 3, fire service instructor, fire officer 1, and safety officer. Lieutenant Kirkwood has successfully filled many roles within the department, such as provisional captain and provisional training officer. In addition, he provides instruction at Fairfield Fire School and off-site stabilization universities in the Northeast. Lieutenant Kirkwood has achieved the rank of number 1 on the superintendent of apparatus eligibility list. Given Lieutenant Kirkwood's very impressive credentials, along with his diligence and commitment, it is quite evident that he will continue to serve the fire department and city well. Therefore, I am proud and honored to submit his confirmation for promotion. Thank you for your consideration of this appointment. Sincerely, Mark D. Boughton, Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What is your pleasure, council? Councilman Esposito.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that we receive the correspondence and approve the promotion and the appointment of Lieutenant David Kirkwood to the superintendent of apparatus.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Councilwoman Stanley. Sorry, Councilwoman Camisa. She's a little quicker. Any discussion under for the promotion for Lieutenant Kirkwood? Discussion. Discussion under this. For discussion. Okay, seeing none, then I'll try your minds. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All right, any opposed, throw me a thumbs down. Okay, and the motion carried unanimously. I think Mr. Kirkwood is on. Is he on? We did? Yeah, we invited him, so let's give him a round of applause anyways. It was a very difficult test, so he did an outstanding job on it, and we wish him the best. As you know, the superintendent of apparatus is sort of like a fleet manager position, if you can think of it that way. And I know Dave will do a great job scheduling and ordering parts and scoping out equipment and apparatus and things like that. Okay, item 2, please.
Communication, extension of collective bargaining agreement between the city and the Teamsters. 2 members of the council from Mark D. Boughton, Mayor. I am pleased to present to the council with my endorsement a memorandum of agreement to extend the 3 collective bargaining agreements between the city and the Teamsters Union, Local 677, for an additional fiscal year. The agreement is the culmination of good faith negotiations between the representatives of the city and the Teamsters Union. The agreement extends the current language concerning the terms and conditions of employment for members of Teamster bargaining units from July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. Due to the economic uncertainty caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, there are no wage increases for the period of this agreement. A copy of the agreement extending the contract is attached. A copy of the agreement and the entire Teamsters contract are also on file in the Legislative Assistant's office. The City Director of Finance is available to answer questions about the costs necessary to fund financial items other than wages increases, which will remain static for the period of this agreement. Your vote in favor of funding the agreement will save the city significant expense in the next fiscal year, and obviate the need for contract negotiations until 2021. I encourage your support in voting to fund the agreement.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's your pleasure, Council? Councilman Stanley, I saw you waving your hand.
Thank you, Your Honor. Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to receive the communication and approve the certification of funds for the extension of the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Danbury and Teamsters Local 677, Public Utilities, Public Works, and Public Buildings from July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded by Councilman, who was that? That was Councilman.
That was me.
Councilman Cowell.
Okay, Councilman Palmer. Any discussions relating to the collective bargaining agreement on the team?
Your Honor,
Yeah, where are you? Jamie? I'm sorry, you can't see my screen. How would you know? There you are. Okay, go ahead.
just a general overall comment. Since this piece here doesn't affect the budget, is it safe to say that all wages are frozen for all departments or just this contract?
So we're in negotiations with fire right now. They're the last of this year's. DMEA ratified a few days ago, but it didn't make it in time for the agenda. So you'll see that in October. There is a longer agreement. The Teamsters, we will next year most likely be looking at an increase in their insurance. Remember, we buy their insurance through the Teamsters union. It's actually a very good deal. It's better than what we can get here, but they are going to have to raise their rates a little bit. So we'll have to negotiate over that next year. So this is a one-year contract, but yeah, we're asking for zeros across the board.
So again, so all budgetary line items be frozen, even department heads as well.
Right now, we don't have any plans to increase any department heads based on projections of where we are and where we think we're going to be in February. You know, typically when we do it February, March.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion under this item. Seeing none, then I will try your minds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
any opposed, just put your thumbs down. Okay, ayes have it, motion carries. Item 3, please.
Communication, State of Connecticut Type 2 Diabetes Prevention Grant. To Honorable Mark Fountain from Cara Marie Fronte, Acting Director of Health and Human Services. The City of Danbury Department of Health and Human Services, which is DHHS, has been awarded a Preventative Health and Health Services Block Grant, a PHHSG, from the state of Connecticut in the amount of $92,104 to be used between October 1, 2019 and September 30th, 2022. The state of Connecticut stipulates that these funds are to be used to host type 2 diabetes prevention educational programs to residents at risk of type 2 diabetes. DHHS is formally requesting to subcontract with YMCA effective October 1, 2020 to deliver these services to our community due to their historical success with their type 2 diabetes prevention program. Prior submission to the City Council was not possible due to unexpected coronavirus preparedness activities and emergency response activities due to Tropical Storm Isis. Respectfully, Cara Marie Prente, Acting Director of Health and Human Services.
By the way, we're going to do an update from Cara in department reports. So I didn't skip over. I just thought it might, because it's become a regular thing, just so you know, I thought it might be better if we just bring her up first, let her give us our briefing on coronavirus, and then we'll go through all the other department reports. So what's your pleasure, Councilman Cowell?
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I move that we receive the correspondence and accept the State of Connecticut Type 2 Diabetes Prevention Grant subcontract with the YMCA in an amount of $73,134.
Second.
Motion made, seconded by Councilwoman Camissa. Discussion under this grant. Mr. Salvatore, you're muted. You got it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the chair, this is going to be for Kara.
Yep. Give her a second to get up on the, okay, go ahead, Frank. Sorry.
All right, Kara, you and I spoke and you answered quite a few of my questions, but I did some research today and I have one more question for you. I will say that I'm glad you're working with the Y because the Regional YMCA is only one of 5 programs in the state of Connecticut that are recognized fully by the CDC. But when I was doing that research, I came across the listing for the City of Danbury Health and Human Services, and the City of Danbury is only listed for employees. And this clearly states for residents. And I haven't been able to get an answer, and I'm hoping you can give it to me, but they're very specific on their listings for all the diabetes prevention programs. And is this truly for residents of the City of Danbury, or is this just employees? And if it is just for employees, because that's what the contract was for, and I couldn't find specific in the contract employees or public, my concern would be is if you're held to employees, does that mean City of Danbury residents wouldn't be able to use the grant money to offset?
Okay, Kara?
Hi, Councilman. Thank you for the question. No, it is definitely for residents. We've spoken to the state. This contract is through the state because, as you know, the Y is already recognized to be able to provide to people. They'd be taking on that role through the CDC. So it can be provided to all residents of Danbury.
Good. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. Further discussion about the grant? Actually, it's about the assignment of the grant. Seeing none, then I will try your minds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody in the negative? Okay, ayes have it. Motion carries. We are now on to item 5. Correct.
Communication, donation to the fire department. To Marky Boughton and members of the council from Marco Masta, acting fire chief. Dear Mayor Boughton and members of the council, the fire department has been offered a generous donation of $5,000 for new fitness equipment at Engine 23 by Integ Systems Corporation in Danbury. I would ask that this generous donation be accepted at the September 2020 meeting of the City Council. If you require any additional information, please do not hesitate to contact me directly. Respectfully submitted, Marco Masta, Acting Fire Chief.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's your pleasure? Mr. Levy?
Your Honor, I make a motion to accept a donation in the amount of $5,000 from the Integ Systems Corporation for physical fitness equipment for Engine 23 stationed at Osborne Street, and a letter of thanks be sent from the City Council.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded by Mr. Cavo. Any discussion related to this very generous donation? Seeing none, then show me those, all those in favor, show me your thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Item 6, please.
Communication, request for extension, water and sewer at 1 and 2 Kevin Drive.
Okay, what's your pleasure, council? Councilwoman Camissa.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to refer this item to the City Engineer and Planning Commission for reports.
Seeing no objection, it is so ordered. Item 7 and 8 were on consent. Councilman, Madam Clerk, item 9, please.
Ad hoc report, tax assessment for the SC Ridge.
Can we have a motion to, go ahead, Mr. Cabo.
Thank you. At this time, I'll make a motion to waive the reading of the minutes of the ad hoc, as all members have copies, and copies are available for review in the Office of the Legislative Assistant and online.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Councilman Rotella. This is simply to waive the reading of the ad hoc report. So at this point, all those in favor of doing that, please signify by saying aye or thumbs up. Just waving.
Aye.
So we're doing okay. Anybody opposed to waiving the reading? Seeing none, then the reading has been waived. Now, Madam Clerk, tax assessment, SC Ridge. What's your pleasure, council? Okay, I'm trying to find, is that
Your
Mr.
Honor?
DiGiulio? Yeah, Mr. DiGiulio.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to accept the ad hoc report for the tax assessment of SC Ridge as presented.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilwoman Camissa. At this time, we'll entertain discussion, and it's hard to see everybody at once, so if you could just be patient, I'll get to you. So, discussion under this item. Mr. Tabersack. Just make sure you take mute off, Mr. Tabersack. You're muted. You here?
I'm asking.
Okay, how's that? Can you hear me now? I hit unmute.
You're good, Mr. T. Go ahead.
Okay, I was wondering, this was brought up at the ad hoc committee, something about a succession agreement in case the people who are submitting this transfer or sold the property to another body. Would something be able to be written in that whatever terms we agreed to would go along with that transference? And I think Les Pinter said that was a possibility that could be added, but I was wondering if it was added or what the situation was.
Thank you, Councilman Tabersack. Yes, we took note of the request that I think Councilman Levy had originally brought forward, and other councilmen. We did look back, and what we thought we would suggest to you was that we would add a clause in this agreement for its final form, which would essentially mirror the agreement that the clause in the tax deferral agreements that the council has been adopting for a number of years now. And that namely would be that if the present owner of the property should decide to transfer the property, sell it, etc., that any successor would agree to abide by those terms and conditions. Otherwise, the agreement would expire. That's the language that's in all those tax deferral agreements. Now, we might flower it up a little bit more than that, but the essence of it would be rather simple. So that if owner B comes along after A departs, owner B could choose to undertake the terms and conditions, and both parties would continue to get the benefits of the agreement. So yes, it would.
It could continue, okay. Could I ask another question at this time, or do you want to pass it on?
No,
Okay.
absolutely. No.
It's a little confusing to me how all this is connected, but the thing is, as you know, I'm most concerned for the building of the proposed high school, middle school on that property. And I was wondering how what we're discussing tonight is related, if it is so related, to that school that's being proposal being discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Tabersack. So right now we have, as you have pointed out, we have a concept, an idea to put a academy, the Danbury Career Academy at the summit. We, however, will need authority and permission from the Connecticut General Assembly. We are working diligently to get their permission to do that this month. It's already September. They're supposed to have a session later in the month, and we feel pretty confident that might happen, but as you know, in that body, there's just no guarantees until all the votes are taken and it's done. So right now, it's my recommendation to the council that we pass this as is. I don't see any reason to amend this, even if we add a school there. I believe that from my discussions with the owners of the summit, that they would be cutting back on the residential units. If they add the school there, so they'll lose about 200 units and keep about 200 units. Their approval now is for 400 residential units. So, I think that we've crafted a fair plan, and at the end of the day, I think all parties will be made whole, and that's something that I wouldn't probably be supportive of, changing the agreement beyond that. If they did or asked to have a change in the agreement, it would have to come back to you, and you would have to opine one way or another whether you were willing to change it or take less money from them if they have less units. I don't think we should, but that's another battle for another day. First, we need to get this approved by the state.
I see. And would negotiations then be between the city and the party that is taking charge of the matrix? I mean, would we have to then negotiate it for, for buying a segment of the pods or whatever are included? I mean, so this is still pretty far in advance. Am I right?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Mr. Tabarsak. So the way it works is that first step is to get the state to recognize that we're doing something that's never been done before in the state, which is to condominiumize a building and get the state to pay for it. So I got to get over that hurdle. Now I have a handshake agreement with state leaders on a not to exceed number for that purchase that we all agree, we pretty much agreed on. It's contingent on appraisals that we have to get according to the special act of the legislature. So there's some work that'll have to be done. I don't see anybody in the ground with a school probably till next year at about this time. That's when construction would begin. So it'll take that long to architecturally, we're doing a design build process here, and it will take that much long to negotiate the terms and conditions of the purchase, which would come to you. And a whole bunch of other pieces that have to get done. But the first step is to get the legislature to say, great idea, we want you to do this, and we're going to provide the funding for it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Salvatore, you have your hand up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm concerned with this, that the buildings developers are going to turn something 1970-ish to gold, and that we're going to end up giving away another developer tax giveaway at a time when the city needs a stronger tax base. I'm also concerned about that additional tax. The 550,000, which could grow to 750,000, I know right now is earmarked for the schools, but in the contract, it is not earmarked specific to a budgetary item. And my concern is that what happens to the schools who are getting that money now later on, when the needs of the city changes or occupancy of the third floor corner office changes, that money may be moved somewhere else. And you also said a word that was interesting, condominiumized. And I know you were talking about the school, but Section 8 talks about the apartments where you think 200 to 400 apartments, it says 400. But if they turn those things into condos, it clearly states that it diminishes their tax obligation from whatever the additional tax is. So I get that, but any good developer can turn that place around and make their money plus after a high school's built and condominiumizing 400, and then they run away. And then I'm also worried about 10 years. 10 years is a long time, in my opinion, because we won't have the ability to renegotiate if they turn that building into gold and the tax, the actual value of the property goes up. So I'm going to have to vote no for this. I do realize it's a really good place, and this is not a vote against the schools. If anything, it's a vote against the fact that the city, I believe, can get more money in the future, and it kind of handcuffs us for a while.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Salvatore. Appreciate your comments. One thing I just want to remind the council gently is that the current value, the purchase price of this building was $17 million. If we were to go with a standard fair market value, the value we currently have it appraised at roughly less 70 million.
Currently it's
45 million. So immediately we're going to be back in court with an appeal saying, hey, this thing isn't worth 45 million. So we're going to lose tax money right off the bat. The worst part is we're not going to collect anything because they're about 3 to 5 years away from actually building anything out there. So this gives money to the Board of Ed right away. It'll be up to you, the City Council, to make sure that that money goes to the Board of Ed. However, remember how much we give the Board of Ed. The taxpayers of the city pay 80% of the Board of Education budget. And so your money is already in there. And you could make that argument later on. I opted to make it an additional payment. In fact, the check would go directly to Dr. Sale, and they've actually built this into their budget this year, into their operating plan. While it is true, somebody might try to internalize that $550,000. The reality is that to do so would be politically unfeasible, would result in cuts and layoffs within the school system, because you'd have to raise taxes to get there, right? You got a zero-sum game here. You got to find 550 somewhere. So if you say, oh, I'm going to keep this, now you're going to have to bring your mill rate up to be able to create another 550, because the board just doesn't have money laying around, as we all know. That's been well documented. So, but I hear your thoughts and I appreciate your comments. Further discussion. Mr. Santos, you're on my bottom, so.
Thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman. I have some of the same concerns that some of my colleagues here have remarked on, but the main heard of these student impact fees that are going to be paid by this developer for quite some time now. I remember a while back, you convened a meeting with state legislators, Board of Education members, and other council members, elected officials in Danbury at City Hall, and we discussed the student impact fee. I love the idea of a student impact fee. It's something that we should have thought of with other developments in the past. The problem that I have is in this MOU, I don't see specifically stating student impact fee. And I understand that there's a commitment by yourself, by this council, that the $550,000 off the bat and later on $750,000 will go directly to the Board of Education. The problem is that that's our commitment, and I could not be here next year, so could the mayor not be here in the future, and we're signing a 10-year agreement. So we don't know who's going to sit on this council, who's going to sit in the mayor's office in the next 5, 8, 10 years. So, you know, just the term of additional tax in there makes it clear to me that that's exactly what it is. It's not money that is directly going to the Board of Education. For transparency's sake, I would have preferred that it had said student impact fee amongst all the other issues that I have with this. That seems to be the most glaring for me, because again, someone else could come in here and take that money and use it for something else. I understand, as you've said, that it's not a politically feasible thing to do, but politics has a funny way of getting things done. So for that reason and for others, I'm going to be voting no on this as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Shinisi. You're muted, Mr. Shinisi. There you go.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, I'm showing the same concerns as the other two comments that were recently made, but I'm still trying to get my hands around of why. Why is the developer wants to make this deal to us, basically agreeing to an assessment of $73 million over, at least over the next 10 years, where it will be frozen between $73 million and $76 million worth of tax value for the assessment. And I don't understand why he would do that. But you mentioned before, Your Honor, that once we purchase, if it does happen, the additional pods for the school, you didn't say how that would affect this contract here for the additional tax. Will that $550 per year go down to, say, half, to $225? I mean, because that wasn't mentioned, because there's still a lot of moving parts with this. And what you said, within the next year, we should have basically a deal either to buy those pods if the state agrees to it.
Right. So, Councilman, I was very clear to say, only people that can change this contract is you. And so once we vote for this, the developer would have to come back to us and say, hey, you know, I don't have as many. That's one of the reasons why you don't use the term student impact fee, because if you tie it directly to students and he has less students than what he programmed out at 550, you're going to have to give him a break on his payment. So it's aside from the fact that the Connecticut general statutes have all kinds of statements about impact fees. Anyways, my point being that if you want to change this agreement, you have to renegotiate it. They're going to have to come back and ask to renegotiate it. So myself or a future mayor or a future council could say, no, we're happy with where we are. Sorry, you got to wait 10 years. And that's the way it is. They don't have the authority to come back, and unless they don't get their approvals, which I think they're just about all done. They've got maybe one more to do over at, might be planning.
They're close.
Yeah, they're close.
So the sale of the building, Your Honor, will not have an impact of this fee per year.
Well, they're gonna
If
have
this
to,
contract is agreed upon without coming back.
if they're good business people, I would come back and try to get a amendment to it. But as a mayor, in my position, I'd say, sorry, guys, a deal's a deal and we love you, and we wish you the best out there, but nah.
Okay, and then again, and also through the chair. Also, I know it was raised about the 550,000 not being set as an impact fee, but an additional tax. But through Corporation Council, we can make an amendment to the motion to designate it, can't we? Through Corporation Council?
To Les, if I could just add, you could have some kind of declarative statement by the council, a resolution we can adopt next meeting saying that this money goes directly to the Board of Ed. Right, Les? I mean, that would be one way you could do that.
Well, you could. I'm not sure that would be something worth recommending, frankly, because the reason, as the mayor indicated, the reason for the care in drafting the document as an additional tax provision as opposed to student impact fee is that there's strategic reasons for doing that, including the statutory one that allows for this agreement in the first place as a tax fixing agreement. So you really want to avoid murking up the waters with references to student fees and such, and let that be the jurisdiction of the administration. You approve a lot of agreements where you kind of rely and trust on how funds will be applied within the agreement. So if you try to lock down every single expenditure in this agreement, you might bind yourself up to commitments that might not be found to be wise later on. The owner of this, to a certain extent has agreed, if it's approved, that's to a certain extent. The owner has agreed to this arrangement because of the language that has been put into the agreement, and that's the language that we recommend to you. So I don't think you should do that in that way. You should deal with that separately as a finance matter. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Shannessy. Mr. Levy.
Your Honor, as far as locking in the money for a particular item on the budget, it all goes in the city's pot. It's all the taxpayers' money, and as individual councils and mayors decide how that money should be best utilized in favor of the taxpayers, I don't think we want to project out 10 years. But I would ask through the chair what this potentially could cost us if we, the assessment, we went to court on that, how many years we have underestimated or the amount of assessment on that property, and what the potential is perhaps in dollars and cents if we were to not go forward with this contract and lose in court, which I think we probably would, potentially to the finance director through the chair, how many dollars would that cost the taxpayers? You're muted.
Oh, sorry. So it's, you know how these things go, Mr. Levy. We're at 45 million, they're at 17 million, and we end up settling somewhere in the middle, 25 million. I think you're right. They can make a very strong argument that it's worth lesser than that because, this isn't a building that's been functioning very well over the last 20 years. So at that current mill rate structure, you're probably $500,000 to $750,000 per year. This grand list, I believe, goes back to 2018. So you're on the hook, 17. So you're on the hook for 3 years of credits. And typically what we do is we roll credits forward the next bill. So we would be giving credits for a significant amount of time to catch up.
I was just trying to point out the amount of money we're talking about as far as the developer's contribution versus what it potentially could cost us. I think that the cost of crediting him for overtaxation may very well eat away at least 2/3 of the amount of money we would receive. That was perhaps the finance director could.
Yeah, if you play that scenario out, and I have, on basically a situation like this in which, you know, as the mayor mentioned, the sale, they purchased a property not too long ago. It was a distressed sale for the 17 or 18 million, whatever it was. It was pretty low. The fair market value that we had listed was just under 45 million. So naturally, there's a lot of room there. In the court, you know, this is not a great time to go to court. They're going to have a lot of sympathy. There's a lot of vacancy in that building, as we all know. There's not a high use potential. They've struggled for years to fill that. We all know that too. And, you know, so we would be struggling to try to come up with a reasonable number. We would have to take a hit on that. There's no doubt. How much? It would hurt. As I mentioned in the ad hoc meeting, we would be coming back to the council, and that would be the first one of the 58 that we had for the 2017 grand list. We've settled, I think, about almost 50 of them so far without going to the council. This would be the first one that we go to the council on, because it would be such a large one, as the mayor mentioned. So that's why this deal is a good deal at this time for the city. Now, it's a 10-year deal. It's going to take several years for, you know, the matrix or the bridge. You know, in 10 years, we're going to want to take another look at it. A new council will be in place, and maybe it'll look different to us at that time. But at this time, it looks good to us. And I think it's a good deal for us. It's a good deal for them, because this is the environment in which we don't know what the future is. It's they see an opportunity there. We have risk, and I would highly recommend that, you know, we take this, because the downside risk to us is pretty large.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levy. Further questions, Mr. Perkins? Mr. Perkins, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You all can hear that this whole thing is fluid. The micro environment is fluid. The macro environment's fluid. Unemployment rate's fluid. COVID is fluid. There's a lot of uncertainty that surrounds this. You can also hear that there is a slight amount of flexibility built into our ability to insert some additional language into this contract that may deal with transferability. I heard the Corporation Council say that they do want to shy away from specific language that speaks directly to the student impact fee. But at the end of the day, we're going to need to get something. I mean, a lot of us have been concerned that the Department of Ed hasn't been receiving enough funds, enough money for a very, very long time. This is something that does do that. So my question to, I guess, the finance director is, when will these payments start? We're going to vote this thing up or down shortly. When will these payments to the city of Danbury begin?
Well, as soon as the agreement is ratified and you know, finalized, I assume then you know, there's certain other conditions that have to be met, and then I think they met a lot of those, or got over a lot of those hurdles on this agreement, and that's why it's being brought to you at this time. So I can't say specifically when, but it's in the very near future.
Okay.
It'll be this fiscal year.
Yeah.
This fiscal year.
Okay. Just one follow-up question. I'm not sure if this is a legal question or if Mr. St. Hilaire can go ahead and answer this one as well. Let's just say that 2, 3, 4 years pass and the project doesn't get started. We have received probably close to $2 million by then. do we need to give the money back if the project gets abandoned?
No, no, look, if we got $2 million at that point, you know, at the, look, they pulled their case already at the 45 million. They pulled the tax appeal, which is a great thing. You know, I think they did that in good faith. Councilman or Counselor Pinter can confirm that, but basically, I think they realize that there's a sincere good faith effort that the council is making in order to get this thing through. So that is a very positive signal to the city that you know, they're going to move forward on this. They're sincere about their efforts, and they're going to make their payments as scheduled. This plan has been in the works for quite some time, both from the city side and their side. So, you know, I think you can feel pretty confident. As you know, the school board has worked this into their plan too. We do not include that 550 into our plan at all. So for those that are concerned about that, you know, you need not be. You know, we work for the school very closely, and it never comes into our number at all. It goes right to the school, and it will continue to do so going forward. You know, so and we know what their issues are over there, and we want to make sure we help them as much as we can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just to close that property is it's problematic out there, and to have a group of developers as interested as they are, I think this is a good deal for the city.
Right.
And first thing they teach you in business school is more often than not, a little something is a whole lot better than a lot of nothing. So I think we need to go ahead and support this thing. We'll vet it out a little bit later once that time expires. Thank you, Mr. St. Clair, Mr. Mayor.
If I may, you know, just keep in mind that reval is done every 5 years. And, you know, you're correct, Councilman Perkins, that things are very fluid. But once we set that number, it's there for 5 years. You know, we can't change it. And they've agreed to a number, which that gives us certainty. And certainty is a good thing in this environment. And I can tell you, you know, for a commercial property to have that certainty from a city's side is pretty good as we go forward, because the next reval for commercial properties, I'm going to be nervous about. You know, look at us. I mean, look at what's happening in a commercial environment right now, and we're only 2 years away from the next reval. Just keep that in mind. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Mr. Alves, you got it.
Thank you. I think I echo some of the concerns some of my colleagues have, but also some of the positives other colleagues have. I think, you know, $500,000 is great for the school. Nobody wants to move away from that. But if we're going to talk on what if scenarios, you know, there's another what if, and that what if this property is worth a lot more than what it is after they build out? My biggest concern is the longevity, 10 years. I think the language is that, you know, they're at a fixed rate for 10 years where they're not going to have mill increases, if I'm correct, or the assessment doesn't change. This would be a lot easier to swallow if we can go to the table and get a lesser look at this and maybe 5 years, and then come back in 5 years and see, hey, do we want to extend another 5 years? You know, out of respect for everybody's time, I don't want to reiterate what was been said, but I did want to echo what a lot of my colleagues said. So thank you.
Mayor, you're muted.
Muted, sir.
Okay, I'll try your minds at this time. Those in the positive, give me a thumbs
Your
up.
Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor?
No, we are, no.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Rotello.
Thank you. I just had a few comments. You know, I've been following West Side development for 20 years or longer. It's in the 6th Ward. You and I worked together on the reserve originally. One of the nice things about the reserve was there was a set aside for commercial development. It was a more of a mix besides just residential. It didn't really pan out completely. And then a couple of years ago, the zoning commission delisted about 800,000 square feet of commercial property, leaving Carbide as the last major commercial parcel in that area. And as we all know, commercial property is a big box with jobs in it. The workers make a lot of money, they spend money in town, and they don't send anybody to school. So there's just a lot of net positives about commercial development. So when the principals came along and wanted to convert at least a substantial minority of that building to residential property, I had some concerns. And we have been meeting with them for years now. I think the very first meeting we had with the principals was in January of 19. And they gave us a proposal which included, I think, a 7-year fixed date on the tax thing, which is now 10. To me, that's a minor issue. But I had some issues with this because it required converting aisle 40 to a PND. That happened. It's done. The zoning commission has essentially allowed this to happen. And I met with the principals in January of this year, and they had some interesting things. My position has always been that Danbury is a lot more positive to commercial development than a lot of people think. And I was saying that to the principals, and I was saying that to the zoning commission. That argument did not necessarily carry the day. But in January, the principals told me something interesting, that their commercial end of the project was doing a lot better than they even thought it would. And they were considering in January downscaling the size of the residential portion. This costs a lot more money to build out a residential apartment with the granite countertops and subway tile and all that stuff than it would to throw up some partitions to make some offices. And they were doing so well commercially that they thought maybe the scope of the residential property would be diminished. And that was music to my ears because I want more jobs in that building. Obviously, in March, everything changed, and COVID has now altered the dynamic of this project and every other project in this country. And at this point in time, there is no crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen with commercial property. I mean, Director St. Hilaire is correct that in a couple of years, the building commercial property assessments are generally based on tenant occupancy and income. It could go south, dramatically go south. The residential property, we don't know what kind of market there's going to be for residential properties. We don't have answers anymore. We're not dealing with a steady state progression A, B, C, D, E. We've gone from A to J and back to D, and I don't know where we're going to be tomorrow. Nobody does. I do know one thing. If we vote for this tonight, we get $550,000. I don't know if there's going to be a school in that building in 2 or 3 years. I don't know if there's going to be 400 apartments in there or none apartments, or it will be filled with kids writing apps, and the principals will, instead of collecting rent, will be collecting a piece of the companies that are formed. I have no idea what's going to happen with this building down the road. I do know this, that if we vote this up tonight, there will be money in the bank as soon as the approvals come through. And this process, while it has been glacial, I mean that in a good way. It has been a plodding project. They have gone through every single legal thing that the city required of them, and the approvals have followed like day follows night. I am fully confident they will get their final approvals, and once they've done that, with this agreement approved tonight, they will owe the city $550,000 this year and next year and the following year and the following year, whether they do anything to that building or not. Everything else is speculation. We have one guarantee, $550,000. I don't want to be larcenous here, but the principals have made this agreement. They're willing to stick to it. I think at this point, even though I've been a critic of this project, since COVID happened, since everything has changed, I'm seeing this in a different light. I am happy that the principals who are well-funded are willing to make this and continue this investment in this city. It is not necessarily a project that I would have designed, but it's not my money either. So, I mean, it's you get to play when you bring your own money. And I think that this, while is not a perfect agreement, it is an agreement that I can live with. And I'm saying this as somebody who has been against this for 2 years. Things have changed. And my opinion of this has changed, and I am willing to support this. And I think that we are ready to move forward. And I wish the Board of Ed good health with this. And I wish the principals good health. So yeah, I will support this at this point, Your Honor. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Mayor, you're still muted.
We are going to try, I knew that. We're going to try your minds now. Any further discussion?
Oh, Your Honor,
Yep,
Your Honor, before.
where are we? Oh, Mr. DiGiulio.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Sorry to interrupt, but I just had a couple of comments, and the discussion, has been pretty thorough, which is good. I was the chair of the ad hoc committee for this, and it's unfortunate some of these concerns and this discussion didn't happen as part of that committee. That it was never brought up, so it would have been nice to be able to review this a little longer from that perspective of the different opinions shared. But there's a couple of items that have been mentioned that I just wanted to point out. I mean, one of them is concerns about fixing tax rates on things and ambiguity of things going forward. But I think in doing that, we're also fixing the rate on the asset that's on our grand list right now, and that's pretty profound. I mean, you're taking right now something that is being valuated at a $44 million market value that was paid, somebody paid $17 million for, which is obviously going to be somewhere in the middle, like the mayor said, is going to be the actual value. And like somebody else, Mr. Rotella just said about the guaranteed 550. Well, I think there's a lot more that's guaranteed. The current tax amount of $863,000 is based on a $44 million valuation. If that valuation is cut in half, so is that current tax amount, not to mention no 550. So there's a lot on stake right now that's guaranteed. $1.4 million is guaranteed, and it only goes up to from year 6 to 10. And I don't know. I mean, if you do the math on some of this, like Mr. Chianese said, there's about 73,000 in value now, about 76 or 77 at year 6. That is an immediate market value increase of 66% based on what it's on the books for today for the next 5 years, with absolutely no development taking place. So I just don't, there really isn't any, we talk about mitigating risk and dealing uncertainties. This is a very risk-free thing for the city of Danbury. If this property goes gangbusters and is worth a gold mine, like folks have said, that's great in 10 years, but you'll never make up, starting in year 10, what you gave up in year 1 to 10. It'll just never happen from a valuation perspective. You can never go collect the money back again. So this is something that an owner and a developer, they're willing to do this. They're happy to, based upon the ad hoc committee report. I think it's a good thing for Danbury. It's a good thing for Danbury residents. It's a good thing for the developer because things are moving forward. I just think the gamble that people are focused on in what we would lose is the only thing certain, is that we would be losing the fact that we're locking in this asset on the grand list at this scale out of the gate. And that doesn't, I mean, this is going to take 5 to 10 years to build. I don't see how it would be worth too much more than it is now until then. And like everybody said with the commercial markets and such, it's a scary thing right now. So I'm in support of this. Everybody at the ad hoc committee seem to be in support of it. I encourage my colleagues also to be in support of it. It's good for Danbury. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiGiulio.
Your Honor, may I?
Yeah, Mr. Sinisi. Go ahead. You're muted, Mr. Sinisi. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I just want to make a statement as well. I did try to log on to the ad hoc for this here, but unfortunately, I think my frustration was made known. I was not able to log on because I was locked out. The host of the meeting didn't allow me in. So by the time I finally got in, the meeting was already over, so I could not express my concerns that I was trying to raise this evening. And I do appreciate everybody's what they said. I think there's positive, there's negatives to it. It is a gamble. either way, it's a gamble positive and it's a gamble negative. You know, it's kind of funny. It's on a piece of property that was first developed based on gambling, which is why the P&D zone was first committed there. So it is a gamble. We are gambling in a way that we want everyone to succeed. And I do believe, you know, this is only a year exposure. Once those pods are sold for schools, this all changes. No one knows what's going to be the outcome. No one's going to know what the value of this building is going to be because it's never been seen before. Have commercial, residential, and a school in a 430,000 square foot building. It's never been happened before. No one knows what it's going to be. So, you know, I was leaning no. I'm kind of still leaning no, but I will most likely vote in favor of it because I believe the risk is only going to be for a year. And I think at that point, who knows what it's going to be. So a $73 million assessment on something based what the mayor has said cannot change unless we allow them out of it will be to our advantage. So I think overall it is a positive based on what we know today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chinese. And I will make some inquiries about being locked out of we're still struggling with some of the technology stuff.
Yeah, if
so.
I could address that quickly, if any council member, if you cannot get into a meeting, you could always email me. I've been doing the ad hocs. If that changes, I will notify you with who is running an ad hoc. But if you send me an email, that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, so but that's IT trying to get that up and running for you, Ben, but we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. So the record will reflect that.
And a voice call would be better, Your Honor.
You got it. Okay, so a request is made for a roll call vote. Any other discussions? Okay, at this time, Madam Clerk, you're still on?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, will you please call the roll and do it slowly?
Alves.
Oh,
I didn't hear you.
No.
No.
okay.
Bezade.
Yes.
Mike Esposito.
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Salvatore.
No.
Stanley.
Yes.
Tabersack.
Muted.
You're muted, Mr. Tabersack.
Control the nose.
Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Yeah, thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up or thumbs down.
You know we can't do that.
Yes. Can
Okay.
you hear me now? I hit unmute.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Fox.
Aye.
Priola.
Yes.
DeGiulio.
Yes.
Cabo.
Yes.
Rotello.
Yes.
Visconti.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Knapp.
Yes.
John Esposito.
Yes.
Santos.
No.
Perkins.
Yes.
Chinese. Ben
Yes.
Chinese.
Yes.
Kamiza.
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Molinari. So 1, 2,
What about Rotello? Paul, did you
Yes,
vote?
I voted yes, Your Honor.
we got no for Alves.
Yep.
Salvatore, no.
17 yeses.
And that's it.
Right, so we have Councilman Alves in the negative, Councilman Santos in the negative,
And
Councilman
Salvatore.
Salvatore in the negative. Is that
Three.
correct? Good,
Yes.
okay.
3 no's.
17. Okay, motion passes.
17.
To be continued. Next up is our department reports, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I move that as all members have copies and copies are available of the department reports in the Office of the Legislative Assistant, that we waive the reading of the department reports tonight.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Councilman Perkins. I would like to have the floor for a second before we ask questions. We can make sure we mute ourselves, folks. Okay, good. I have to say that we got some good news today. We have somebody who has been doing an extraordinary job for the city, who literally has been working 60 and 70 hours a week, who has picked up the phone at midnight on a Sunday night and has been out visiting with our homeless population, has been out working on putting testing sites together, has been conducting all kinds of counts. And so the state of Connecticut has agreed that Kara Prunty will continue on as our acting health director for the foreseeable future. And a positive affirmation by the state was very much welcomed, and a recognition of her hard work for not us, but for our residents in our city. So Kara, congratulations to you. Good job.
Thank you.
And now tell us what we're doing wrong.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. As I'm sure that you're all aware, the Connecticut Department of Public Health issued an alert for Danbury on August 21st because we were seeing an uptick in our COVID-19 cases. Since then, we have worked with the Connecticut Institute for Communities and the Community Health Center to increase testing. We have tested well over 3,000 people since then. I want to say thank you both to those organizations, their incredible testing teams, the hospital, our police department, our police explorers, for all of their hard work in getting people tested. We are continuing our testing efforts, and all of the testing location information is on our website. I encourage anyone who is feeling ill or who may have been exposed to stay home and get tested. Since the 21st, we've had 103 COVID cases. Our 7-day average is 16 per 100,000, and our positivity rate is still at 5%.
5%, okay.
We are continuing to work with community partners and do targeted outreach to help stop the spread. But I please urge you to continue to follow precautions and being diligent with following guidelines. That's all I have. Thanks, Mayor.
Your Honor, can we ask questions?
Yeah, I was going to open the floor up to questions. So do you want to go first, Mr. Rotello?
Sure. Kara, first of all, congratulations on your recognition by the state. I think we were all a little bit worried when they came in here like a bulldozer. I don't know if they were going to take over the city or not, but I'm glad that they have reaffirmed your qualifications and the quality of your work here in Danbury. That's certainly a positive sign and a reassuring sign. And I'd just like to thank you for the work that I know and also imagine that you're putting in. I'm not looking over your shoulder at this, but I have a pretty good idea of what you're going through, and it's a pretty serious thing. So I'd like to at least extend on behalf of my constituents, their thanks for the effort that you've been putting in on behalf of my constituents in the city of Danbury, and the toll that it may be taking on you. And let's just hope that there is a tunnel and there's an end to that tunnel. I don't know when that is. I don't even want to predict, but I had a question. There's a provocative theory about infectiousness and testing using the PCR test. I don't want to get too deeply into the weeds, but the PCR test requires an amplification of the virus. And there's some concern now that we are amplifying it too much to get a positive result 30, 35, 40 times. And at that point, by amplifying it so much, we're calling people positive who can't possibly transmit. They may be positive, but they're not infectious. They're not going to get this themselves, more to the point they can't give it to anybody else. So there is some talk about lowering that number. And when we get our reports from you, we just get positive or negative. And I am wondering if you get the PCR level, the replication level, and if you get that, can we get it also? So we'll have a better idea how many times these people's viral load have to be replicated before it shows up. It's a big difference between 40 and 30. Some people are saying at 35 and 40, it's irrelevant, but at 30, it's dangerous. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate it. We do get lab results. We get all the lab tests are submitted through our statewide system. I know there is some talk and they are looking at that. There is concerns. That's why the CDC has stepped away from the recommendation of getting 2 negative tests before you can return to work in that setting. So they've gone away from that because if it's 10 days after your first positive test, then after that, if you're not exhibiting symptoms anymore, then you're generally considered that you're not infectious at that point.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Further questions that you might have for Ms. Prunty? Mr. Tabersack.
Okay, Kara, thank you again for what you've been doing. I know you are someone who really cares for everything connected with this. I was wondering, what is the homeless situation in Super 8? Last number was 43. Is it still about the same?
We have currently we have 37 individuals there.
Okay, wonderful. Since I'm very, very pleased that everything seems to be going in the right direction. Danbury seems to be able to finally to really make a dent into this problem, and you've been a good part of it. Secondly, the winter's coming. Is the plan to continue having Super 8 open through the winter? I know we have this Pacific House group that we had before us and all, but is the plan being that it would be ready for whoever the homeless are, that the program would carry them through the winter? Like I said, everything's been going in the right direction, but I was just wondering about that,
Yes.
the timeline.
Yes, the plan is to continue on until the sale of the hotel goes through.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or thoughts for Kara? Oh, sorry, John Esposito. Mr. John.
Thank you, Your Honor. My question is for either you or Director Prunty. I know the decision was made for distance learning for the schools, and certainly in the best interest for the safety of our students, teachers, and staff. Certainly there's some uncertainty with this 2021 school year, but with the distance learning, I know as a parent of young children and also, friends and neighbors of mine, also with young children, there's going to be some hardships involved with, having to stay at home and continue on the distance learning program. And there's definitely frustrations involved in I don't want to say lack of communication. I wouldn't say it's a lack of communication because nobody really knows what the best alternatives are or solutions as of right now. We have a little bit of an increase in our cases in our area. What my question is, can anybody allude to a potential a future plan for getting students back into class, at least on a hybrid model? Is there any possibility of that in the near future? I especially worry about single parents with single incomes. Now they've got to make decisions to be at home during the day, if they can't go to their jobs. So, I think they really need to have some sort of guidance and possible projection on when they can get back to their jobs and somewhat normalcy on their schedules. So, if anybody could comment on anything like that. I know that's a loaded question and I apologize for it, but I think it's important for people to have some sort of information regarding that.
No, I think, Councilman, it's a very real concern. So I don't see it as a loaded question at all. I've spoken to the superintendent about this, and as he and for whatever advice I can give him, as you know, we don't run the Board of Ed, and we don't have the authority to tell him to do anything. But he certainly does. I just talked to him this morning. He does check in pretty much every day and lets me know where he's at. My advice to him, and I know Kara's advice to him, has been, look, we're going to listen to the science, and we're going to follow the science and what our medical advisors, along with Kara, tell us to do. And then we're going to do that. And the quicker we do that, the quicker we can get out of this and get back to our normal routines. His plan right now is to do another evaluation in about 2 weeks of where we are, numbers wise. What's the arc look like? What's the bell curve look like? If it seems like we're starting to smooth out and we can get that 5% number down around 1 or below 1%, then he'll move to a hybrid model, but it takes him about 2 weeks to spin that up, with all of the logistics that are involved with that. So he thinks that by October 1, he'll have a decision to go forward with hybrid. And by the middle of the month, they'll actually be doing hybrid. The last time I checked, we had about 4,500 kids that have opted for straight distance learning. That is a choice you can make: distance learning, hybrid, or home learning.
More
So
than
about
40%?
no, about 4,500. So it's about that might be about a little bit less than 40% are opted to go straight hybrid, straight distance learning. So that's where we're at. I asked them today about numbers as well. That's always a concern for us, particularly as we have hit the September 1 deadline. It usually, though, is after Labor Day that we get hit with a little bit of an enrollment burst. He says that it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's your standard. Some kids come in, some kids go out. He's not seeing a big bump, but it is something that they're sensitive to and that they're watching throughout the rest of the month of September. So looks like end of the month will be a decision made about going to hybrid, and then it takes him 2 weeks to spin that up and actually put that into practice. If the numbers are still plateaued or have gone up a little bit or haven't moved much, he's going to stick with distance learning on a month-by-month basis until we can get to a point where those numbers are dropping. And Kara, I don't know if you wanted to add anything in there, but
No, you pretty much covered it. It's just a valid concern. I know it's something that they're very much thinking about.
Okay.
Anything else, John?
No, Your Honor, I appreciate your input and as well as the directors as well. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I don't think it's unfair to say, I'll get to Mr. Palma, to say that it's been a tough time for policymakers, Kara, our medical doctors who look at all this data. People are really frustrated. They're COVIDed out. They don't hear about masks. They don't want to hear about social distance. But, we've got to get these numbers down, which I think we can do. Mr. Palma.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd like to thank Ms. Kara for the wonderful job she's been done and how much she cares for the city. And I've been having a lot of questions from the parents, and one of them, they say, what's the possibility that maybe the teachers can be at classroom? Like, if they need to explain something, to be on the blackboard or something like that, to motivate the kids. That way, the kids, they don't feel like, they are just in the house and all lonely. And maybe that way will motivate them and learn more. For what I heard, they don't have that much of learning at the level that they're supposed to have at the grades. So what's the possibility that something like that can be done? I know we cannot tell the Board of Ed what to do, but can we recommend something like that?
Thank you, Councilman. I think that they are looking at different teaching strategies and different platforms, and they are trying to accommodate all different kinds of learning styles. That's something that could better be spoken about with the Board of Education, but I know that is something that they are looking at and evaluating.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palma. Good thoughts. Further Mr. Salvatore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is going to actually end up to Chief Armasta, but I wanted to make a comment about the work that the municipal crews, fire, police, city, public works, health department did during Isaias, but specifically to Chief Armasta. You mentioned the response in Isaias, and I was wondering if you can kind of expand upon the volunteers part that they played, the person hours that they spent, and the different ways that they responded to calls because of situations with servers.
Certainly. Thank you, Councilman Salvatore. Well, as you know, that was a hard-hitting storm, devastating effects. We had, at one time, we had 200 calls stacked up for wires down and fires and blocked roads. And so you know, we don't have enough people to go around for that many calls. So the volunteers stepped up big time. They manned their stations and they helped in a big way. You know, we had to triage a lot of calls, get to the worst ones first, and they did a great job. Along with the fire police, they were out there for basically 36 hours straight during this storm, and we were able to handle everything the storm threw at us in a very efficient way. So kudos to the volunteers and the fire police. I did send them a thank you to all their people for the work they did. And the career staff too. I mean, it was all hands on deck in a storm like that. And we got by with no injuries to citizens or fire department personnel.
I thank you for that. And I know I kind of pointed out the volunteers, but sometimes I'd like the fellow councilmen to hear about them. But Chief, I have to give you kudos as a 30-year-old member of the fire department, the volunteer fire department. You run one of the best. You run the best fire department in the state of Connecticut, and I thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that, Councilman. Also, we have some very intelligent people there. And as you know, Lake Wabika was shut down. We could not get a fire truck through that neighborhood. So we hired an extra personnel to man a pickup truck for a couple nights. And it paid off because there was a fire up there and we couldn't get fire apparatus in, but the pickup was able to get through and help extinguish the fire and keep it at the incipient stage. So it was great work. And I also like to throw a little shout out to Kara as a department head. Kara has been phenomenal. Any questions that pop up, and they pop up every day, you know, with COVID and other issues, she's very responsive. She gets back to me right away. Even if she's chasing her 2-year-old down the driveway, which she was yesterday, she doesn't have much time to spend with family, but she still answers the phone and gets back to us. So great job, Kara.
Thank you. Any other questions? We'll move to regular all department heads now. Kara, once again, congratulations and keep up the great work. Okay, other questions for department heads? Perkins, are you okay?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I scanned real quick and I didn't see anyone from the Board of Ed here. Is there anyone from the administrative offices that can answer some teaching and learning questions for me?
Unfortunately, there's nobody here. I could invite at next meeting, if that works for you, I could invite maybe Dr. Sale or Kevin Walston to join us. Would you like that?
It'd be kind of late.
Okay.
I'll send them an email because it'd be too late. I mean,
if you don't get a response, let me know. I'll make sure you get a response.
All right, because certain things that I'll just send them an email. Another question. Maybe is Tim Nolan out there? I think I saw him earlier.
He is here.
I'm just trying to get kind of a understanding from a technical aspect about why this last storm knocked out so much power. I mean, is there any kind of data that's taken to determine where the trees fell in relationship to other storms? Because it seemed like an inordinate amount of power outages for what I would consider a little bit longer than normal. So is there any kind of data they collect on where those trees come down?
Well, we provide lists of all of the downed areas, and we share those lists with all of the departments, and we've all gotten together right after the storm to confirm that we don't have redundancies, and we meet, so on and so forth. But this storm, unlike the April 15th, 2018 storm, which was predominantly in the northeast corridor of the city, was all over the city. This storm was all over the city. It didn't pick a section. It didn't have a tornado that cut a path, which was kind of how the 2018 storm proceeded. This was indiscriminate and really knocked down trees all over the city. So I think that's why, and you know, we were not unique. All of the surrounding towns, had that problem as well. So there were no neighborhoods that were could have avoided or did avoid trees down. It was everywhere. So, we do have that data. We do, as Chief Weedle at the time took that data and sent it to Eversource so that we prioritized as a group. All of the department heads prioritized as a group, so Eversource could interpret the data and send their assets out. As we know, that did not happen for, we didn't see them for a couple of days, but our end was covered as we collected that data constantly right from when the storm occurred, put it in a spreadsheet form, shared it amongst all the departments because we were all receiving phone calls independently. We met to make sure there was no redundancy. We went through all that data and we made sure that it was in the proper form and went to Eversource, who is actually very particular as to how they receive it. And so we prioritized it in accordance with their flow charts for how we're supposed to give it to Eversource. So they had all that information, and then it was a waiting game, waiting for them to respond.
Just a follow up to you, Mr. Nolan. Several years ago, there was a lot of tree trimming around, a lot of cutting down of trees. Is that something that Eversource is going to re-implement? Because I asked the question and someone told me it was the power company. So is that going to be a bigger part of their program going forward? Do you know?
They're supposedly have the same budget every year for cutting trees in their right of way around their power lines. As well, we do. We have capital money that I spend every year, as well as we have a forestry department, obviously, that also works in the right of ways all year long. So we have that benefit that we're constantly improving the condition of our right of ways so that we have a lower impact on our electrical system. But Eversource does as well. You'll see a lot of Eversource crews, tree cutting crews, they're subcontractors out there on a yearly basis.
Just one last thing. How's Grand Street doing? I mean, I can see that a lot of progress is being made, but for my untrained eyes, I can't see all the structural jargon. Could you just give us a quick update on that, please?
Sure, absolutely. Grand Street, you're going to see is going to get worse before it gets better because it's in the middle of construction. It is in bad shape to begin with, so we're going to improve it, and with a little patience, you'll see the completed project next year. We just spent the last 2 months putting in a complete drainage system, which it didn't have before, and was the primary reason that the road was in bad shape. The water coming down off the hill, constantly breaking up, freeze thaw would create problems for that road. We were constantly cutting ice up there. So it has a completely new drain system. Next year, we'll be putting in curbs and sidewalks and a new roadway, and it's going to be a beautiful thing.
All right, thank you. Glad to hear that. I'm sure the residents in that area are glad to hear it as well. Thank you.
Can I say something, Your Honor?
I see a special mute unmute button. Go ahead, Mr. Sinisi.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just really quick, I just want to follow up on some of the comments. In my area, since we live on a border, a lot of our issues with our electrical grid is with Richfield. And it seems like Richfield doesn't like to cut their trees, which has a big impact on my area, Spruce Mountain, Myrie Brook. They all depend on the Richfield circuit, apparently. Is there some type of inter-town agreement where they need to cut trees or something? Because
well, remember, most of the tree trimming is done by Eversource themselves. We don't get involved. We'll trim trees that aren't close to the wires or that are in our right of way, but we won't trim trees that are within roughly 15 feet of any power line. That's Eversource's responsibility. But having somebody intimately involved with this discussion with Eversource, and I just testified. I waited 11 hours to testify the other night on several new pieces of legislation that are going forward. The bottom line here is that Eversource doesn't want to spend any money, and they are consistently and constantly laying people off or not backfilling positions. The most important people, which is own your own businesses. That's your line workers, the guys and gals out there that are physically doing the work. So they were at a high of about 450 line workers, probably 15 years ago. They're down to below 300 right now, with no plans to rehire people to come back out and reattach wires and do tree work. All the work is done via subcontractors, which is great, but if there's a storm and the entire region gets wiped out, the subcontractors are going to go whoever's paying the highest, fee. And so they'll pick and choose where they're going to go. So it's very frustrating for us. Trees are a problem. They're part of the solution. But the other thing that they like to do is trim the trees, Ben, and then hand you the bill for it. Now, this is a company that made $1 billion last year. It seems absurd that we should have to pay to improve their grid. That's what they should be doing. And that's what we're fighting against right now. But a lot of this stuff is really the result of Eversource's negligence. And they just don't care. They care about their profits. They don't care about the people. Sorry, it was a rant.
Okay.
Yeah, tell us how you feel, Mayor.
I'm so fired up about this. Okay. Further discussion for our department heads or questions? Seeing nobody with their hand up, I will now try your minds on accepting the reports. Please signify by saying aye or giving me a thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries unanimously. At this time, I'll extend all committees and stay tuned because maybe in the next couple of weeks, we'll talk a little John Oliver. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Rosella, seconded by Mr. Shianisi. All in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye.
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 Be opposed? All right, everybody have a great month of September, great Labor Day weekend. And we'll talk